Andrew, do you hear that?
What is that?
You hear that? You hear that beat?
That sounds nice.
That's the sound of free Element electrolytes.
Oh my gosh.
Those are 8 electrolyte packets that Element is so graciously sending all of you guys for free.
But there's going to be some weird hoops, some stipulations.
You gotta pay $50.
50?
No, dude. Okay, no, it's 5.
Okay, I was like, damn.
Yeah, no, you literally just have to pay $5 for Element to send you 8 different packets of their awesome electrolytes that you hear Mark talk about, I talk about, you talk about. These are so good for if you're dieting, if you're not, if you're trying to focus on performance. They're just so amazing, and they're going to send you 8 of them for $5.
Yeah, and what I actually I love about this whole recharge pack is, you know me, I love orange salt. That's my favorite flavor. They have tons of other great flavors, and now here's this opportunity to try all of them. So why would, give me one reason why you wouldn't jump on this right now. Exactly. You guys need to go to drinklmnt.com/power project. You can claim your free Element recharge pack right now. Just pay the $5 shipping and you get to sample all of their flavors. Guys, we wouldn't steer you the wrong way. We love this stuff. We've been talking about them since before they teamed up with us. They're homies now, and just seriously, drinklmnt.com/power project. Again, absolutely free. Just pay for the $5 shipping and it's yours. Go there right now. Now.
What up, Power Project crew? This is Josh Settlage, aka Settlegate, here to introduce you to our next guest, Dr. Will Cole. Dr. Will Cole is a leading functional medicine expert who consults people around the world via webcam and locally in Pittsburgh. He specializes in clinically investigating underlying factors of chronic disease and customizing health programs for thyroid issues, autoimmune conditions, hormonal dysfunctions, digestive orders, and brain problems. Dr. Cole was named one of the top 50 functional medicine and integrative doctors in the nation and is a health expert and course instructor for the world's largest wellness brands, such as Mind Body Green and Goop. Dr. Will Cole is uniquely skilled and experienced at finding the root physiological, biochemical, and hormonal causes underlying many diseases. He has broken free from the limiting approach of standard care, which most often calls upon drugs and hormones as a first defense against these diseases, without a real inspection as to the root underlying causes and contributing factors to each individual's presenting complaints. Dr. Cole uses breakthrough diagnostic testing and analysis that's rarely done in conventional settings to uncover the hidden causes of why people feel the way they feel. He also takes great pride in delivering personalized healthcare treatment to patients, as well as providing an environment that supports and inspires patients to reverse their poor health. Dr. Cole has also studied how red light therapy can fasten wound healing, specifically acne and acne scars, but that's going to be a different story, hopefully one that we can hear on this episode of Mark Bell's Power Project. Please enjoy this conversation with Dr. Will Cole.
I got to tell you guys about the poll we ran.
Let's go, Daddy. Let's hear it.
Got me again.
You've been
you every day.
Running up and down a pole?
Sliding up and down a pole.
What pole are you talking about? Can you put this pole away? You're already cranking out babies over there.
I know.
I see what you did there.
How many holes, speaking of poles and holes, how many holes does a straw have?
It's
a great one. I'll just go for,
wait, what's your answer?
So 1, 2, or other. So 1, 62%, 2, 33%, and then other got 5%. But these are some of the best answers I was able to read. Jeremy, 2 holes, 1 tunnel. A condom has 1 hole. A condom with an end chopped off has 2 holes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Let's see. Jaren says infinite holes since there's an open space in every molecule and solid doesn't exist. That was fantastic. 2 holes, 1 hollow. We change dimensions every time we flip a hole upside down. That was confusing, but that was from Michael. He's hanging out on the podcast often. But then every once in a while you put anything out on the internet and somebody takes it way too serious.
Okay.
So Christian, everyone just watched the video titled "How Many Holes Does a Human Have?" by some name that I can't. Oh, by Vsauce. It gives you an exact mathematical answer to the question. By definition, a straw has 1 hole. There is no room to argue. There are not 2 holes, and if you squeeze one side of the hole, you have no holes. Watch the video before you comment. Before you comment me, and you'll see I'm 100% correct.
How many holes does a human have?
So
1. 2.
So I asked, does the documentary give women a few extra holes? Nah.
No.
He says, nah, both sexes have a total of 7 holes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we have it sucks, but like our little, our little wee has a hole that you can stick something in.
Yeah, but
that hurts.
There's the birth canal, and then there's the other pee hole.
Yeah, but that's what?
I'm gonna yeah. So anyways, everybody check out our daily polls.
Yeah. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Here we go.
5, 6. Where's the 7th hole?
Exactly.
Mouth.
There you go.
What about you got your ears?
Yeah. No.
Earls. Yeah, ears.
That would make it 9 holes.
You got your anus.
Okay, so I was counting
so you got 5 holes on your
a hole.
5 holes on your head, right?
1, 2, 3, 4.
And then you got your wiener and your a-hole.
7. There you go.
7, right?
I was counting the eyes for some
And then
reason.
girls, is it considered one hole? Like, because it maybe streams off into 2 different things or something?
So that's where my question came
hypothesis.
Remember that this started because of you.
Yeah, I know. I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm good with it. Well, I mean, yes, you are absolutely right. It started because of me, but it went here because of this guy.
And
no,
this guy.
This answer.
Pussy's mesmerizing, isn't it? Like it really is.
And it got here because of you.
Hypnotizing. I'm just thinking, you're talking about holes and stuff. I'm just thinking like,
I can't remember. Was it Joe Rogan that would be like, it's undefeated?
Yeah.
Like, it always wins.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it does. Fucking so many songs written about it and stuff,
Yeah.
Some are happy and some are sad.
Some are mad. So many loans taken out because of it.
Anyway, I think we still have a show. Hello? Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
No one's listening anymore.
We're on.
People dropped off.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, these guys are gross.
We have a great guy on stage.
I know. I think about that too. I'm like, dude, we're going to have such a nice, like, high intellect individual on, and then we go ahead and ruin it this way.
Well, the podcast did start great because we had our boy Josh introduce the guest.
Correct.
And then it came to us, and then we kind of dropped the ball, but it's going to come back up when the guest comes on.
That actually that saves us a lot.
It does.
Because people are like, oh, this is going to be good, interesting, a lot of good information.
And then we're talking about straw holes.
Cool.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Anyway.
Our boy Josh Settlage reading those profiles.
Yeah.
Doing a good job of it, huh?
Yeah. No, we've been going back and forth. I'm just telling him what he's doing is working really well.
Yeah, I want to know, we have so many different doctors on the show. We have like dentists, and we've had all kinds of people from all different facets of doctoring. And we've had, I think, like Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, like alternative medicine type of thing. So it'd just be cool to figure out like exactly, what this guy's background is, and then kind of what it's morphed into. Because it always seems like it turns into something different as you dive into it for a longer period of time.
And it's really cool because like when people study medicine, but then they take a different route than your typical individual in the medical field, it's always cool to talk to those individuals because it's like a lot of them say, okay, they taught us this in med school. I did a bunch of research and I found out that all of this wasn't true. And it's like this way. Right. So it's gonna be interesting to see the way he goes about things because like he's into keto. He takes a lot of different routes to figure out why people have issues. Like it seems that he doesn't just give you a medication.
He said the simplest thing. I was listening to him talk about macros, and he's like, you got protein, you got fat, you got carbohydrates. He's like, you talk to any bodybuilder and like, hey man, you count your macros, you count your protein, carbs, and fat. And he goes, and the reason why they're obsessed with that, he's like, that is the simplest, easiest way to make changes to your body. You kind of pay attention to the intake that you're putting into it, and you make some sort of assessment, either based off a history or you have a coach that assists you, and they say, hey, here's your macros. Hey, follow this. And he said it's great because the amount of different things that it can change for you just by having less body fat on you can have a major impact. Then he also talked about ketones being a 4th macronutrient and some of the benefits of ketones, especially in certain cases for certain people. And so it'd be interesting to talk to him about, does he feel that everyone should try a ketogenic diet? I know that he said He didn't feel like it's for everybody. He also said that what I liked that he said, and I agree 100% with this. He said it's not for everybody, and it's certainly not for everyone, or it's not for like all the time. You don't just do it all the time. So I think that's interesting. Not that you can't do a ketogenic diet all the time, but I think it makes the most sense to use it intermittently and to go back and forth between different diets. I know Joel Green has talked about that a lot, where you some people have talked about seasonal stuff where you eat, fruits and certain foods at certain times of year and things like that. So I'm excited to talk to our guest today and also learn more about, like, what is this functional medicine? Like, what does that mean? Like, wouldn't we want all the medicine to be functional?
Right.
Yeah. I wonder, like, because I was thinking about it. I've heard of naturopathic doctors, right? Individuals that like use natural remedies instead of, your typical pharmaceuticals. I wonder if he has anything to do with that. But one thing that I saw on his website that I think is interesting, and it kind of falls in line with Joel Green, because I think you said Joel Green was like, shouldn't be fasting all the time or fasting every day. He's literally said it's dangerous. This guy has something that he talks about called intuitive fasting. And I kind of think the name says it all, but it seems that since he's put so much importance on it, he probably has sort of a bigger structural idea behind what it is and how you do it. Because even I've found that, like, after when I started doing fasting, when I fasted for too long, I just started to feel a little bit frail. I started getting a little bit too lean. I was like, God dang, I need to just start eating when I want to eat. So now I don't fast every day anymore. There's some days that I'll just eat during the day, and some days that I do fast. But he probably has a little bit, maybe more of an idea of what's going on and why maybe you don't want to do it all the time.
A couple of signs that you're fasting a little too much or too often is you'll kind of see it in your eyes. If you start to get a little baggy underneath the eyes and stuff, that's always a sign. Another sign, maybe you don't recognize that in yourself because you see yourself every day.
Yeah.
Another sign is that you're just missing that little extra, it just feels like there's something missing from the inside. It's hard to describe, but you're just missing that little extra. And when you drink coffee or have caffeine, it doesn't seem to really do much. You're just like, man, that didn't really hit me the way I was hoping. So if you feel any of that, that's a good reason to think, all right, well, tomorrow I'm not going to fast. Then see how you feel, as you move along. But it can be really beneficial to fast.
Do you think that's different if you have excess body fat on you?
I think it can be. I think it can be different if you have excess body fat, and also too if you learn to, they call it fat adapted. I don't know how important it is to really worry about whether you're burning fat or sugar. But I do think that it's important to just basically try to reduce the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating at some point, just from your average person. If people are eating 300-400 grams of carbohydrates a day, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of function towards their main goal, then I think reducing that can be huge. And I think your body automatically starts to learn, like, hey, let's burn up some of this fat as fuel.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me ask you this, actually. World Carnivore Month is done.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Are you, so what's like, what are you doing now?
Well, last night, I just ran out in the middle of the street naked because I was so excited that it's over with. But after that, I've been eating pretty normal. I'm basically taking this week off to just sort of kind of whatever comes my way, whatever I see, just eat a little bit of that. But like yesterday was pretty clean still. I just had a kind of a normal breakfast, ate some steak and eggs and things like that. And later in the day, had some chicken, and I did have some ice cream at night. Ooh. After I had my dinner. I had some ice cream. I had the Netflix and chilled.
BetMGM. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. Great to have you on the show today. I want to dive in and kind of kick things off by asking you about what is the deal with functional medicine? Can you explain what functional medicine is? Because we don't really have much of an idea over here. And then maybe also how you got into functional medicine.
Sure. So functional medicine, in short, it's evidence-based, alternative or complementary medicine. It's a lot more than that. I think more broadly and more specific, we interpret labs using a thinner reference range. So anybody that's listening out there will know, they when they go to their doctor, look at these basic labs, and you have this reference range, this X to Y interval of where your numbers are supposed to be on that Quest lab or LabCorp or your doctor's labs. We get that reference range from a statistical bell curve average of people who go to labs. So the people that are predominantly going to labs are sadly people with health problems. So there's a lot of people out there that know intuitively, I don't feel the way that I should feel. I'm struggling with these different, maybe weight loss resistance or fatigue or low libido or digestive problems, whatever the case may be. They go to their doctor and their doctor says, everything's fine. You're just depressed. There's an antidepressant, or you're just getting older, or you're a new mom, all these well-intentioned reasons as to how the heck you could be having symptoms despite these quote unquote normal labs. What the doctor's unintentionally telling them is they're a lot like the other people with health problems that they're being compared to on that reference range. So just because something's common doesn't necessarily mean it's normal. And, we want to look at optimal, vibrant wellness, not just the lab's reference range. So we're looking at a tighter range, this thinner range within that larger reference range of where does vibrant wellness live? Where is that? Where do people that live long, healthy lives, where are they at? And so we standardize those reference ranges that aren't standardized. And that's the functional range where your body is functioning the best. And we're also running more comprehensive labs in functional medicine. So we're looking at root components like microbiome issues, underlying gut problems, or toxicity issues, or nutrient deficiencies, or hormonal imbalances, whatever the case requires to get a thorough, comprehensive look. And then we realize we're all different. And there's no cookie cutter approach when you're dealing with chronic health issues, especially with autoimmunity or hormonal problems. You could have 100 people with the same set of symptoms, and what's needed for one case isn't needed for the next one. So it's being evidence-based, but it's customized to the individual. That's my more long-winded explanation of functional medicine.
That kind of makes me curious, because you said everybody's different, but then you also said that you guys are trying to create a tighter reference range. And with that being said, if somebody, this might be a two-part question. We've had guests that have come on and told us, okay, when you go to the doctor, these are the numbers that you want to have them look up for you. Like, these are the main numbers if you're going on a carnivore diet that you want to check on, right? So when it comes to individuals and checking on their health with labs, when they go to a doctor, what do you think? Because I would think that if I ask what are all the labs, there's too many to list. But what are some of the main labs that maybe people want to try to pay attention to? And then also, do you have maybe references on your website for what that tighter range for these numbers on those labs are? Because I feel that maybe that's something that it's not really that easy to get access to.
Sure. Yeah, those are really important questions. And you're right. That's what people want to know, and they want access to this information so they can go to their doctor and A, ask for the labs, but B, know how to interpret those labs to have agency over their health. So it's definitely important for people to know. Yeah, I have all these reference ranges on my website at drwillcole.com. And you really could look even at functionalmedicine.org, if that's the Institute for Functional Medicine. That's who's trained myself, my team. That's the Cleveland Clinic's Functional Medicine Center. But I write about these things at length as well. But some basic labs, and honestly, a lot of these labs, your local PCP or GP could run these. You don't need a functional medicine doctor. So I think that's important to know, at least a starting point. Obviously, we can get deeper with other labs in functional medicine that they won't run, but at least a starting point. Or even if people have labs, they can even look at their most recent labs, pull it out, and compare it to these the optimal ranges. So some good starting points would be A1C and glucose. Those are very important for people to understand. Your fasting glucose, the optimal ranges is under 90. That's what we want in functional medicine. A1C, we want it under 5.4, or at least around 5.4 at the upper limit of that. Those are the optimal ranges, not just the lab's reference range. That's your 3-month average of your blood sugar. Triglycerides, we want that triglycerides to be under 100. Above 100 can be a sign of insulin resistance or blood sugar problems. I mean, the reason why I'm focusing first on these metabolic issues is that it's estimated that 50% of the United States has some problem with blood sugar, where they're on that blood sugar insulin resistance spectrum, if you will, where it's maybe mild, maybe moderate, but it's contributing to how they're feeling. But a lot of people have metabolic syndrome and prediabetes, and they don't even know it, let alone all the type 2 diabetics that are out there. So those are three. HDL is another one. We want that quote unquote good cholesterol to be above 59. If you look at the triglyceride HDL ratio and make sure those are optimal, that's something that the American Diabetic Association uses, the American Heart Association. So we look at those as well. And inflammatory markers that are basic stuff. You can have your local doctor run them. Is high sensitivity C-reactive protein, HSCRP. It's an inflammatory protein. We want that to be under 1 in functional medicine. Above 1 is a sign of inflammation. Homocysteine is an inflammatory marker. We want that to be under 7. Above 7 could be a sign of inflammation as well. So those are some basic metabolic labs and inflammatory labs that are good starting points. And then we can, get deeper from there.
And how long can we rely on today's lab results? So I guess actually the question would be, how often should we be getting labs done like on a regular basis so that way we have something to go off of?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it depends on what you're dealing with, right? It depends on if it's the person that's just, I want to optimize my health. I want to feel the best I can feel, and I want to check in periodically. I would say every 6 months isn't a bad idea. To see where things are at, see if what you're doing as far as your lifestyle changes, whether that be physical activity, food changes, improving sleep, whatever you're working on, you want to see if it's working and moving the needle. So that's a good starting point every 6 months. If you're dealing with more chronic health problems, I would tighten that up a little bit to 3 to 4 months at the beginning, at least, until you get a good rhythm on if what you're doing is working. So with patients, when I'm clinically monitoring them, typically it's every 3 to 4 months, just to make sure we're objectively moving in the right direction.
A functional medicine doctor will most likely use some unconventional ideas and concepts, right, to end up finding the answer. So my understanding would be that oftentimes you go to a regular doctor and they see that you have an issue with your cholesterol. They might just prescribe cholesterol medication, and it might be warranted for various reasons, but a functional medicine doctor would probably start to maybe poke around at some different areas, look at different labs. Is that kind of accurate?
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, cholesterol is a great example. I mean, total cholesterol by itself is a very poor predictor for assessing cardiovascular risk factors. So it's like flipping a coin. About half of people who have heart attacks and strokes actually have normal to low cholesterol. So it's very reductionist to say, well, cholesterol above 200, that's always a bad thing, and we should take all the measures to get it lower. That may be the case. Like you said, some people need to be on some statin drugs, and that's appropriate. But there's a lot of people where they're not actually looking at the context. The context matters in so many areas of life, especially health, and especially when it comes to cholesterol. So we have to look at the quality of the cholesterol and the context of the cholesterol. Instead of saying it's above 200, let's get it down with a statin drug. So better predictors for assessing cardiovascular risk factors would be that HDL. You want that HDL, the good cholesterol, to be above 59, like I said, which adds to that total cholesterol, because total cholesterol or cholesterol is a sum of HDL and LDL. So if you raise the HDL, the good cholesterol, that's going to bring up that total number. LDL, which is very much misunderstood, it's just reduced as bad cholesterol. But the reality is it's not LDL that's all bad. It's the type of the particles that carry cholesterol that could be potentially problematic. So in functional medicine, a core lab that we run, which is a conventional lab, I mean, it's something that Quest LabCorp can run. They call it by different names. Quest calls it Cardio IQ. But it's a nuclear magnetic resonance, or NMR test. It's what's known as a subfractionation of particles that carry cholesterol. So basically, we're looking at the quality of the particles that carry cholesterol. And you have two subtypes of LDL. You have small, dense LDL particles. Those are like oxidized, rusted BB bullets that aren't good. They are inflamed. They're oxidized. They can potentially tear through arterial walls. That's not good. But there's also large buoyant LDL, which are like fluffy, buoyant cotton balls that are protective, just like the good cholesterol, just like HDL. So we have to look at the nuance of it in the context of cholesterol. Instead of saying, well, above 200, let's give everyone a statin drug. Well, let's read between the lines and actually look at the what's behind all of this. And there's some people that have slightly high cholesterol because of genetics, and they're fine. They're in pattern A, they're in the non-oxidized pattern. They have low triglycerides, they have low inflammation markers, they have normal blood sugar. All right, that's a completely different case than someone that has the same amount of cholesterol, or let's even say even low cholesterol, but it's high triglycerides, high A1C, a lot of inflammation. They're in pattern B, the oxidized LDL particles. That's not good. The total cholesterol isn't telling the whole picture.
How does somebody go about finding a functional medicine doctor? Because I know a lot of people are frustrated. You know, they go to their doctor, and I know that some people are also fishing around for maybe answers that they, they're kind of wishing that they get a different answer from these doctors. And again, sometimes the doctors could be 100% accurate, but I had a friend years ago, Brian Alsrew, who just really was suffering with a lot of issues. He was really, really sick. He was throwing up, multiple times a day. It got to a point where he threw up pretty much all day, every day, 30 times, 50 times, 60 times a day. It was just insanity. He didn't know what was going on. And he went to a lot of different doctors, and they didn't really know what he had. They speculated it was this or that. He tried a lot of different medications, and nothing was really seeming to have an impact. And then when I met up with him, I had just ran into him, and he told me how sick he was. I was like, man, I wish I knew, because I have a friend that can probably help you. And that friend is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and I led him to her. And then she was able to kind of bounce him into seeing a couple different doctors. And she was very open to, not just handling it on her own. And I think sometimes some doctors are intimidated by that, maybe, and they don't want to, kind of open up their playbook and test whether you have worms or heavy metals or these various things. So how could people find a good functional medicine doctor maybe in their area?
Yeah. Dr. Lyon is brilliant. She's an amazing human being too. So you could do two things. You could go to functionalmedicine.org. That's a good place. You could look up your zip code, and you could look at their specialties within functional medicine experience that they have. My day job is I consult people around the world. We started one of the first functional medicine telehealth centers in the world over 10 years ago. So my 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. is talking to people via webcam like this. We just drop ship labs to them, and we're providing this insight and guidance over time with them. So you can do telehealth. All that information is at drwillcole.com, or find someone local at functionalmedicine.org.
I don't want to harp on the lab portion of what we were talking about, but when you mentioned, and I forgot the whole name, the neuromagnetic something lab. I know that a lot of people are, I know that a lot of people are like, okay, I'm going to go get that done and see what's up there. But we had Dr. Joel Gould on the podcast recently, and he was talking about the importance of vitamin D and getting your vitamin D levels checked, something that not a lot of people do. It makes me wonder, because you mentioned something earlier about how you ask people to do certain labs that, most doctors don't, like this, again, neuromagnetic, blah, blah, something. So I'm curious, what other, I guess, lesser known labs should people maybe get done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the NMR test is one that's typically not ran, because here's the reason for this. It's superfluous from a conventional standpoint. They're going to give anybody and everybody, they're going to recommend a statin drug if it's above 200. So it's not that the doctor's being like malicious or keeping information from you by not running an NMR test. They can run it, but the end result's still going to be that statin drug. So why would they run it? All they need is that cholesterol above 200. So from a medical standpoint, their training is to diagnose a disease and match it with a medication. So they're running the most conservative labs to get the information they need to give that recommendation. But from a functional medicine standpoint, that context matters. The nuance matters to understand that, to see what is necessary for you. There's a lot of different options. So NMR test is interestingly conventional, but it's one that's just not ran that often. And some other more non-conventional labs, even though functional medicine centers within conventional settings like the Cleveland Clinic, they do run them there, but they're less common. I would say a microbiome test is one of them. You mentioned like the worms and what's going on in the gut for somebody that has like GI issues. But even if you don't have GI issues, you don't necessarily have to have extreme digestive symptoms to have underlying gut components to your case, because so much of our health is governed by the gastrointestinal system and the microbiome, all the trillions of bacteria in our gut. So it's 75, 80% of the immune system. So when you're dealing with any immune mediated issue or inflammatory problems, which are a product of the immune system, you want to look at where the predominance of the immune system lives, which is in the gastrointestinal system. So looking at it's typically a stool test. You could do like a 1, 2 day, 3 day collection to look at the landscape of the good bacteria, any bacterial overgrowths, inflammation coming from the gut, intestinal permeability or leaky gut syndrome, digestion and absorption. All those biomarkers are found on a stool test. And then I would say another common, more out of the box test to consider would be a hormone test. It's a more expanded hormone test for anybody struggling with hormonal problems, whether it's a guy with low testosterone or thinks it's low testosterone, or it's women with progesterone and estrogen problems, or cortisol problems, people struggling with chronic stress and fatigue. You want to look at what's called a Dutch test. It's a urine saliva test, and there are different tests depending on the case, but all in all, it's going to give you a lot more insight than that snapshot in time on that lab. When you go to like a conventional lab for urine, for blood, you're just going to get serum bound. You're going to get and where you're at that moment. But these urine saliva tests are a little bit more comprehensive because you're getting multiple snapshots throughout the whole day to get a bigger context of your 24 hours and how you're feeling.
I really appreciate your approach because you were saying earlier about A1C and glucose and these being metabolic disorders and how a large percentage of our population, suffers from diabetes and people are just overweight in general. If people can figure out a way to be on a diet that's reasonable, that allows them to simply just control their body weight, not get any fatter, maybe just, maybe even getting a little healthier. We don't need you, right? We don't need it. We don't need your book. We don't need your website. We don't need any of these functional medicine doctors, most likely, unless we just run into some crazy problem. But what I try to share with people often is, and I hear you talking about the ketogenic style diet and things of that nature. I'm always trying to just sell people on, look, man, let's just figure out a way to control the overall amount of energy that you take in every day so that you can work towards losing some weight, because losing weight will most likely be one of the most beneficial things that you can do. Then you can kind of worry about all the other stuff afterwards. Do you think that's kind of a correct approach? Is that how you're doing some of your work?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I want to empower people to have agency over their health. And I think a lot of these things that people can do in their own life, they don't need a doctor for. So that's a good thing. I think there's so many people that are struggling right now, and there's so much conflicting information out there online that they don't know what to believe. So if I could provide some sort of experience that I have clinically to say, look, if most people did this stuff, these simple things, they would start, the body's amazingly resilient. I mean, the body wants to find homeostasis. If we just give our body some slight changes, it can have exponentially high power over our physiology.
It makes me curious because Mark mentioned how I think on your website, you mentioned Ketotarian, right? I have no idea what that is. So maybe we can talk about that. But when we had Ken Berry on, he's also a medical doctor who changed the whole way he did everything, and now he uses a bunch of nutritional interventions for all the people that he works with, and it's wild. So I'm curious about yourself within naturopathic medicine, or not naturopathic, functional medicine. I had naturopathic written down. You deal with so many different issues, but why are you focused so much, or it seems that you're focused on using the ketogenic diet in different ways? Why the ketogenic diet?
I have to say, too, we're such a small community, I guess, but Gabrielle Lyon, Ken Berry, these are awesome people. We're all buddies in the space. But the ketogenic diet is a tool. It is a tool of many tools that I use in my clinical practice, something that I've experimented with over the past 15 years personally, and also about the past 11, 12 years clinically in different iterations. There's many different ways to do it. Ken Berry is going to be a little bit more of a traditional ketogenic diet doctor. He really is a expert in that. And Gabrielle Lyon is really focused on a lower carb but protein style. All doctors have their slight focus on it. As a functional medicine practitioner, I don't really have a tribal focus on one thing, because I know I'm meeting people at all different points of their journey, and I'm meeting all different types of cases. And if I hung my hat on one thing for everybody, I'd be proven wrong all day long. So yes, there's some common truths. Like all of us are talking about these things that are true, but I need to know not just what's clinically going to move the needle in a positive direction. And look, there are different faster ways that we can get someone healthier faster, but you also have to know what they're even up for. Like, what are they even ready for? And the science and the art of what we do is that if someone's stressed about what they're doing, or they hate what they're doing because even though it's good for them, they hate it, that stress around eating is not going to produce a completely different result than someone that really loves that same thing. So I have to meet the person where they're at and then explain what's clinically necessary, but meet them where they're at. So find something sustainable, but also moving the needle in a positive direction. So the ketogenic diet is something that I advocate for. It's something I do in my own life as well. Ketotarian, you mentioned like not knowing what it means, because it's a made up word. I completely made it up. It's not even a real word. So it's a clean ketogenic diet. It's a mostly plant-based clean ketogenic diet. So it's pescatarian keto, sort of Mediterranean keto in many ways. And has things like olives and extra virgin olive oil and wild caught fish and nuts and seeds and low fructose fruits and coconut and all that stuff. That's sort of my approach to keto for people. And that's something that I'm exploring in a deeper way in intuitive fasting. It's my newest book, where it is how do we pair a clean ketogenic diet with flexible intermittent fasting, which are two sides of the same coin. The more fat adapted somebody is, the more they're going to go without eating so much because they're more fat adapted and they can go longer windows without eating. But the more somebody is eating a clean ketogenic diet, at least periodically, the more that fat adapted they're going to be as well. So they're both sides. The more fasting you do, the more fat adapted you're going to be. The more ketogenic you are, the more fat adapted you're going to be. So that's definitely something that I implement with my patients as well as personally.
Intuition fasting kind of sounds like inadvertent fasting, like where you simply because you're getting the supply that you need, you're not really thinking about food, and so you just end up in a position where you're like, I'll just eat later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on one end, like if somebody's metabolically inflexible, like we were talking about this metabolic markers, they have chronic inflammation, maybe their cardiometabolic markers are not good. It's paradoxical. How could fasting ever be intuitive? So that's part of the reason why I titled the book that way, because to the layperson that is struggling with different health problems, fasting is going to be anything but intuitive, because they're going to be hangry and be needing that next snack because their blood sugars are all over the place. But when somebody has metabolic flexibility, that is fertile ground for proper signaling pathways to have a true like knowingness of when you're hungry, you eat, and when you're not hungry, you don't eat. And that's possible for every human being. But you have to put the work in to actually show up for yourself, your health, to be metabolically flexible enough to have a knowing of what your body loves and what your body hates and what your body doesn't need all the time. But say that to somebody that's struggling with hormonal imbalance or hangriness or cravings, they're not going to know what true intuition is when it comes to their health, because that craving or that hormone imbalance is going to mask itself as intuition, quote unquote.
What are some of the easy things that you kind of referenced earlier? You said, there's some easy things you can do to, stay out in front of, having a healthy metabolism. What are some of the things that you like to recommend for people to do?
Well, first, I would decrease the things that drive inflammation levels in the body, and more specifically, disrupt the microbiome, the gastrointestinal system. So decreasing the amount of grains, predominantly gluten-containing grains, decrease that. That's going to disrupt the microbiome. It's going to raise blood sugar because of the carbohydrates. And most people have some sort of inflammatory response to gluten-containing grains. So that's wheat, rye, some oats, barley, spelt, and then decrease the amount of conventional dairy that you're having. There are better forms of dairy. I mean, there's fermented grass-fed dairy, there's beta-A2 milk, there's better versions of it. But for the sake of simplicity, decrease the amount of conventional dairy. Added sugar, which most people know that, but even the euphemisms of things that doesn't look like sugar. So educate yourself on labels and know that even if something sounds like, well, it sounds so natural, like agave nectar, it's still sugar and it just sounds prettier. And then the fourth would be industrial seed oils. So like soybean oil, canola oil. Some people are fine with a little bit of these in packaged foods, but oftentimes it can drive inflammation levels and should be limited. And I mean, those 4 things I just mentioned, for the most part, everybody in functional medicine, you mentioned Dr. Barry and Dr. Lyon, we're all going to get behind that because those things drive inflammation levels and disrupt the microbiome. And then you start increasing healthy fats like the ones I mentioned, olives, avocado, coconut cream, wild caught fish, grass-fed beef, increase those. A variety of plant food like vegetables, cooking vegetables. If you have digestive problems, a lot of people think, okay, like the salad is like the picture of health, right? But they're not even digesting salads right. They're bloated and they have GI pain from salads. And it's because their gut is so wrecked that they can't even digest plant foods that are raw. So I would have focus on more cooked foods, soft foods, soups, stews, at least at the beginning while you're getting your gut healthy. So those are some key things. And then tighten your window of eating. And that's something that I talk about in intuitive fasting. You don't have to do any extreme fast. Like just do a 14, 16-hour time restricted feeding a day, meaning maybe bring your breakfast up a little bit, like allow a couple hours after you wake up to start eating, to allow that your body to have a bigger rest time after you wake up.
That, it makes me wonder why you believe fasting is important. Because I mean, I fast too quite a bit every now and then. And like there's some days that I do, some days that I don't. But within within the fitness industry and the health industry, you have certain individuals who are very high level who are like, fasting is totally unnecessary. It's totally faddish. You don't need to do it. It doesn't really have that many benefits. Just eat the same amount of calories throughout your day and you're going to be okay. Then you have individuals that are like, there are benefits to fasting. There are some benefits that maybe, there are different benefits to it. So I'm curious as to you, what benefits that you feel people have from restricting their time of feeding and why you may think it's important.
So it's a tool like anything else. I think that it's a tool that people should experiment for themselves, and we're all different. That's the heart of functional medicine. It's bio-individuality. So I don't think everybody needs to do it to be healthy, but it's a tool that can enhance things and amplify things and move the needle for people that are maybe stuck at a plateau, to mix things up, to kind of what is it? It's a hormetic effect. It's a form of hormesis, just like working out is. So that good stress and shaking things up a bit can make your metabolism more resilient. It can increase lipolysis and fat burning, but it's also a way to start producing some ketone bodies. It is a way to start tapping into what researchers refer to as the 4th macronutrient. We have protein, fats, carbs, and ketones. Beta hydroxybutyrate is a fuel for the body. So it can pass through the blood-brain barrier. It acts as a signaling molecule for lots of different pathways in the body. So it acts as a natural anti-inflammatory. So a lot of times people that are struggling with different inflammation issues, it's like an endogenous natural NSAID or Tylenol that your body makes on its own. It lowers things like NF-kappa B, the COX-2 pathway, the NLRP3 inflammasome, all these pro-inflammatory cytokines that you don't really high. This is a natural anti-inflammatory. It increases something called autophagy, which is cellular recycling, sort of our body's own repair mechanism, our own anti-aging mechanism in a way. And it increases mitochondrial biogenesis, actually making new mitochondria. We talk about the gut microbiome. It resets the flora, all the bacteria in the gut, because our gut seems to have this circadian rhythm where certain colonies are higher in the morning, some colonies are higher in the evening. So having a little bit of a break of eating helps to reset that. So it could be an amazing, let's get us past the plateau for people that are doing good things, but want to take it to the next level. But look, try it, be consistent with it. If you're going to try it, just like any type of working out, you have to be consistent for a while, see if it's actually moving the needle for you. Does it improve your quality of life? And do your own N of 1 experiment. If someone doesn't like it, then I would say maybe try a different type, because there's tons of different ways to do intermittent fasting. But if you really doesn't resonate with you, doesn't mean you have to do it. But it's a great tool, and it's a completely free tool as well, which is appealing for many people.
In your experience, how connected has mental health been to diet?
This is an important topic, because in the West, we like to separate mental health from physical health. Like, this is a mental health issue. Like, I have anxiety, or someone has depression, someone has brain fog or fatigue or ADD, ADHD. I mean, any one of these sort of brain health issues or mental health issues. The reality is mental health is not separate from physical health. Mental health is physical health. Our brain is part of our body. And there's a whole field of research looking at this. It's known as the cytokine model of cognitive function. Cytokines are pro-inflammatory cells. So it's research at looking at how inflammation is impacting how our brain works, how inflammation is impacting our mental health. So I mentioned how that beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, can really work on lowering neuroinflammation. It improves something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's some of the neurological benefits of a clean ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting and many, many other things is so helpful for people with things like anxiety and depression and brain fog and other neurological issues. So we can't separate and isolate and compartmentalize mental health from physical health. And I think that's central to my work with my patients because a lot of them are struggling with different degrees of this. And when they start realizing, okay, the things I do in my day-to-day life can make a major impact and can actually help my brain be healthier, that's a powerful tool.
That actually makes me wonder if you could, I know everybody's different, so this might be kind of like too general of a question, but when you think of people's lifestyles now, like I mentioned, we had Dr. Joel Gould, who's talked about people aren't getting sunlight at all. People aren't getting outside. They're going from box to box to box. And that definitely has an effect on your circadian rhythm, your sleep, which will affect your mood and your mental health. So we know that there are like habits that people have that are not beneficial for their mental health at all. But nutritionally, has there been any type of trend or general, I guess, pattern you've seen in terms of people coming in with certain issues that have common like nutritional habits? Are there things that you're just like, hey, this is a trend that I see with a lot of people that eat this way. Maybe try taking this out and making this switch. I mean, you talked about seed oils, dairy, all of that, but is there anything else?
Mm-hmm. Those core four that I mentioned, the grains, the dairy, the sugar, and the industrial seed oils, those are definitely like if someone hasn't experimented with getting rid of them for a time and seeing what that can do for not just brain health, but just overall systemic health, that's a good starting point if you haven't. Some other foods that are a little bit more less known, even though I think they're more known than ever, but foods that are healthy but are problematic because of people's gut problems, meaning they are real foods, they're from the earth, they're from their natural stuff, but they are problematic because of the epidemic of gut problems, basically. So the four more foods above the core four that I would say would be nightshades, which are a plant group that includes peppers, tomatoes, white potatoes, eggplants, goji berries, all good stuff. Like I love stuff. I love ketchup. I love hot sauce. There's nothing wrong with it. But some people's systems, they're reacting to these foods. Like the alkaloids in these nightshades, they're driving GI inflammation, joint inflammation, musculoskeletal inflammation, flare-ups for certain people. Eggs are another good example. I love eggs, but some people, the albumin in the egg white, it's causing inflammation levels in their body. Legumes would be another one. I don't have a problem with legumes. Some people do. So the roughage, the lectins, protein in different beans can be problematic for some people. And then nuts and seeds. I don't have a problem with nuts and seeds. Some people do. So that goes back to that earlier point with as far as my clinical practice, I don't have an agenda on like, these are bad foods, these are good foods, because I want for the person to know for themselves what works for them and what doesn't. So I do fine with them, but maybe I know many patients that won't do well with a configuration, different lists of those foods. They'll have problems with that. We're all different. So those are some healthy foods that people should at least consider thinking, oh, do I feel bad around when I have those foods? And maybe consider removing them for a time and doing sort of an elimination diet approach.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Piedmontese Beef. Real quick, I'll have to give a huge shout out to my boy Nsima. Dude, you looked fantastic for that photo shoot. What were you eating for your meal prep?
So it's actually pretty awesome. The reason why Piedmontese is so great is not only does their beef taste amazing from those jacked cows over at Piedmontese, but it's also pretty low fat. They have certain cuts that have more fat, but it's like a diet steak. And I coined that from you, Andrew. You're the one who called it a diet steak because leading up to the shoot, I wanted to lose a little bit more body fat. I didn't want to eat a crazy amount of fat. So I just honestly loaded up on protein and steak from Piedmontese. Can you tell me the macros on their flat iron, Andrew? Because you know those.
Yeah, so the flat iron, I believe, is like 46 grams of protein to only 4 grams of fat. I mean, tell me another protein source that has that ratio of protein to fat. Like it doesn't exist.
Yep.
And then even more so the diet steak itself that I guess I could have some claim to fame. I call the bavette steak a diet steak because there's like 100 grams of protein for the whole thing and only 16 grams of fat. But the thing is, it's like the size of a football. So for anybody that's really trying to cut down and they like, oh, I can't be on a diet because I'm always hungry. Try eating a bavette steak, and see how you feel. You're going to get tons of great protein, tons of healthy fat, taste amazing. And I can tell you right now how to get 25% off that. You guys got to head over to Piedmontese.com. If you know how to spell it, say it with me. It's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. That's actually what I was just about to ask. If is the elimination diet or a form of that the best way to go about trying to figure out what sits well with you, or is there any kind of labs or any tests or maybe some guided instruction from a functional medicine doctor that somebody can do to help better understand? Because I know for me in my past, I've struggled with a bunch of different foods. Like Mark would try to school me on certain things, like, oh, if you have this, you'll feel this way, and I'd be like, dude, I crap my pants like nonstop, like with the carnivore diet. So it's like really frustrating. So is there like maybe a certain direction you can guide people in regards to figuring out how they can find out what foods sit well with them and which ones they should definitely avoid?
Yeah, I think that there's no lab at this point that I like better when it comes to food reactivities than an elimination diet approach. So that's why my second book, the one that right before Intuitive Fasting that came out last year, it's called The Inflammation Spectrum. And it really is a deep dive in that. And it's just born out of my clinical practice and seeing how to do an elimination diet in a way that works and gets you feedback for yourself to know, hey, I don't feel good when I have this. And it's a no-brainer at that point to keep it out for a time. But look, I mean, reintroduction is just as important as the elimination. So sometimes people remove it fine, and then they just like get sick of it, and then they bring it all back in, and they don't get any information on if it works for them or not. So I want the reintroduction chapter of that book, The Inflammation Spectrum, is really important so that you can get that information on what foods are causing the issues. Now, look, there's a whole section in that book, exactly what you were talking about, is like if you're still having problems on a carnivore diet, which is an ultimate elimination diet, there's something going on here. So that's most of my patients, is that they've done all that stuff. And then there's a whole sidebar in that book that talks about histamine intolerances, salicylate intolerance, oxalate intolerance, FODMAP intolerance, people that have beef allergies because of certain immune problems. So there's a lot of beyond the basic stuff that at that point, labs are helpful, because it's not the basic food sensitivity testing, which, to be honest with you, those have less to do with the food and more to do with the immune system's overreaction to those foods. So when I see tons of foods lit up on those food sensitivity testing, really all it's telling us is that the person has intestinal permeability, their inflammation's really irritated, and it's tagging everything with an antibody. So if you went to the lab like the next week, you'd see different foods being positive on that because it's the snapshot in time. So an elimination diet is way more appropriate as a starting point to heal the gut and calm things down. And then later on, if you want to run a food sensitivity testing, you can get better data on that because things have chilled out a bit and you may know a few things that are still irritating the immune system. But these deeper dive things that I just mentioned, running a histamine intolerance test, running these sort of underlying what's really irritating the immune system, looking at chronic infections, et cetera, that can create this sort of low-grade inflammatory response long-term, despite cleaning up your diet with like a carnivore diet, which you can't really go more specific than that as far as eliminating things.
There's something that I know that you can help us and the listeners kind of understand more of. When I used to train people in person a few years ago, whenever I'd have like a heavier client come in and we talk, they'd say that, yeah, my doctor said I have thyroid issues. And that was like something I heard so much. My doctor said I have thyroid issues. My doctor said I have thyroid issues. Yeah. And that's something that I, like, even close nowadays, whenever, like, sometimes when I'll talk to those like heavier individuals again, it's like, oh yeah, my doctor said I have thyroid issues. So my first question is, how legitimate is that when a doctor says, hey, you have thyroid issues, is that sometimes just kind of a blanket, thing to say you have that? I mean, some people legitimately do, but is it over, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it over
diagnosed?
Is it over diagnosed sometimes for the general population when they go to normal doctors? And then also, because you have a lot of knowledge here, how does somebody actually really know if they do have thyroid issues?
This is an important topic. To me, I think if anything, there's two different things going on. I think what you're saying is right, because the doctor wants to help the patient and they're like, oh, it's a thyroid problem. It's slightly off. So they want to give that something to help that person. So they give a levothyroxine or Synthroid or something like that, some thyroid replacement hormone. I do think that's going on. And I bet for your client base that you were seeing, I could see that being the case, is like they were probably advocates for their health enough to go want to seek answers. And the doctor's like, maybe it's this, that's the TSH is slightly elevated. And TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a pituitary hormone, a brain hormone. So just like what I mentioned with cholesterol, context matters on that too. So there's a lot of thyroid problems. You have to look at the context of that, not just hanging your hat on one number on a piece of paper, which is a snapshot in time, because it's going to be all different depending on the day that you collect it. So there's two things: the context of the person and what they're dealing with, because the thyroid hormone, the imbalance is there or dysfunctions there. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. I find that sometimes people, their immune system is so stressed out, they have other things going on. They maybe have lifestyle, like mental, emotional stress that is going on. And those other variables are what's suppressing the thyroid. So it's not always that, well, the thyroid's low, let's get it up. And that's because what you'll see happen is that people do take the thyroid replacement hormone, their numbers do improve on labs, but they don't feel any different. So at that point, you have to say, okay, well, obviously it wasn't the thyroid that was keeping you back from doing all these things. We have to look at, not be so myopic and say it's just that one thing. With that said, they're not running comprehensive thyroid labs typically in the conventional setting unless the person's really fighting for it. Back to that cholesterol analogy. It's superfluous. They're going to give everybody Synthroid or levothyroxine and maybe like a T3 like Cytomel. But beyond that, that's what their options are within the conventional system. But we want to run a full thyroid panel and then look at the optimal ranges, not just the lab's reference range. So we're looking at TSH, total T4, total T3, and then free T3, free T4. The body converts T4 to T3. 80% and that conversion happens in the liver. So we have to look at liver health, and then 20% is converted in the gut. So we have to look at the gut microbiome. And then we have to look at thyroid antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibody, thyroid globulin antibody. These are autoimmune markers. I mean, the majority of low thyroid problems in the West are autoimmune in nature. It's really not a thyroid problem. It's the immune system attacking the thyroid, thinking it's a virus or bacteria, Hashimoto's disease or Graves' disease, some sort of autoimmune thyroid issue. So I think there's two things going on. One, they just think, okay, this levothyroxine is going to solve all these people's problem. And for some people, it is a tool. And for some people, they need to be on those things for sure. But what happens to the people that they're told this is thyroid, they're given the T4 and they don't feel any different? So at that point, it's not dealing with the full complexity of why they feel the way that they do. So that would be my thought on that.
Yeah, you're trying to solve the problem on the level that it exists, right? So if somebody has this a thyroid issue, what sparked that? Like, where did this come from? Did it come from environmental reasons? Did it, you try to trace it back with your knowledge, and it sounds like you have such a vast knowledge of just keeping people really healthy and strong. What are some things that people can do to protect themselves against? We're now hearing like there's other strains of this virus perhaps kicking around and things like that. I know you're also well-versed in like red light therapy and things of that nature. What are some things that we can do to keep ourselves healthy and strong and staying away from some of these viruses? I know we hear people talk about washing the hands all the time and social distancing. What are some things that we can actually go and do to be proactive to make sure we don't end up in some compromising positions?
Mm-hmm. the best thing you can do, I mean, beyond all the basic things like you mentioned, of course, like do that, but the real health side of things, like how can you make your immune system the most resilient and then mitigate risk factors as much as you can? And we can't control everything. There is exceptions to what I'm about to say, but the vast majority of people that have the most severe cases are very metabolically inflexible. They are very metabolically sick. And that's back to that earlier statistic that I said, that 50% of the United States is struggling with some sort of blood sugar problem and insulin resistance. So the more that you become metabolically flexible, the better chances you have with having a less severe case, and you'll be able to fight it. Your body will be able to fight it appropriately. So leaning into these practices of a clean ketogenic diet, leaning into things like intermittent fasting, that starts to train your body to be more metabolically flexible, these healthy hormetic effects to make your immune system more resilient, your metabolism more resilient. Specific nutrients, I mean, vitamin D is the obvious one. Vitamin D you mentioned earlier, but it's responsible for over 2,000 different genetic pathways. Very important. It is very much correlated in studies coming out now that the people that have the most severe case tended to have lower vitamin D levels. So make sure your vitamin D is somewhere between 60 to 80 is the optimal range. Most people, even if they're supplementing, are not 60 to 80. So you want to get your vitamin D checked, because if you're supplementing, I see it all the time, they'll be better than if you're not supplementing, but it's like maybe 30, maybe 40, maybe 50, but that's it. You want to be a higher range than that to get the best optimal ranges for vitamin D. And then food is first. I mean, you want to really look at food as medicine, to provide your body raw materials to have all the phytonutrients, all the polyphenols it needs, all the vitamins it needs, but also stable macronutrients to balance your blood sugar. Because blood sugar volatility is really anathema to immune health. So you want to have blood sugar stability for sure.
I want to piggyback off of something that Mark asked, and it's because of our boy Josh Sedlich that helps do all the research on the guests that we have on. He mentioned that you dabble in terms of like light therapy or red light therapy, in terms of like seeing if it's legitimate or not. And I'm curious, like, how legitimate do you think that is? Because some people see that and they're like, that's all BS. It's just light, or it's just red light. And then I don't know if you think that there's benefit to it. There's a lot of people that say that it has benefit towards the mitochondria, et cetera. So how important do you think it is, or how beneficial do you think it is? And yeah, can you help us understand that?
Sure. Yeah, I should have mentioned that under the immune system. I think it's a great tool to consider, but it's like a tool like all the other things. I think it comes secondary to food. I don't think you'll red light your way out of a poor diet. I think you have to start with like some core things. And then if you want to add these other things in and experiment, there's no risk factor to it, to try and see if you like it. There's some exciting research around it to show it does improve mitochondrial health. It does support pathways that could be beneficial with lowering inflammation and modulating the immune system in a positive direction. But for some people, look, it's more studies, of course, need to be done over time. There's a lot of anecdotal benefits as far as people noticing it improves their quality of life. And there's really no risk factor to give it a try. And be consistent with it if you do try it. Because sometimes people do it for a little bit and they say, it doesn't work for me. That's like doing anything sporadically and saying it doesn't work for them. Like they show up to the gym once a month and states it doesn't work for them. It's going to take time and be consistent. Show up like anything, any craft, any art that you're trying to get good at, to be consistent. And I see these tools to be part of that too. And I could go, there's a huge list of things that come to mind on that, is that to really see if it works for you, you have to be consistent with it.
Have you seen any firsthand experiences with red light therapy that somebody has, that I don't know if you prescribed it, but like maybe, you kind of gave someone the idea to go ahead and start doing it. Have you seen any reports or anything firsthand from anybody getting some real benefit from the red light?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's, as I mentioned earlier, my whole focus throughout the day is talking to people with chronic health issues, a lot of people with autoimmune problems. And because I'm with them for such a long period of time, I'm consulting them via webcam over the course of a year to 2 years. we can really hone in on, okay, let's move the needle with these core things. Let's dig in deeper with certain protocols. And I've seen the needle move in people's health journey time and time again with something like red light therapy, where they felt good. They were better with the foundational things we leaned into, but then they layer in tools like red light therapy, like a Juve light or something like that, or ice, like cold therapy or sauna therapy, or these type of more out of the box, non-food, non-natural medicine, non-medication things. They really can be a tool in the toolbox to lower inflammation, to support the immune system, improve energy, improve sleep. I've seen all of those.
How weird do you get with some of this stuff? Like, are you wearing the blue blockers and watching the sunrise and, concerned about your circadian rhythm and things like that?
I'm not that weird. I talk about the weird stuff, but I like to keeping it simple. I don't know. For me, it's like, I feel great. I don't need more tools just for the sake of it. I don't tend to be more of a biohacker type. I have a lot of patients that are biohackers, and I have to know this stuff clinically. I know the research. I know how to implement it. I've experimented with all of these things to know for myself, but they're not things that are major needle movers for me to know all this stuff. And I'll tell you what, I do have blue light blocker glasses, so I guess I'm a little weird, but not that weird. But I'm looking at a screen all day and my eyes get fatigued staring at screens all day long. So I find that my eye fatigue is improved. But I want to get the patient feeling the best they can feel. And for some people that have exhausted all options, they're really struggling with different things. Let's bring in other tools and try them out and see if it's a needle mover or not. But I'm pretty basic here. Even like biohacking tracking stuff, like Oura rings, the Lumen, I use them for patients, but for me, I don't have to. I'm pretty intuitive with my body to know, hey, if I do this, I feel good. If I don't, I check in with my labs periodically, like I said, but it's not something where I have to know day to day all these metrics. It kind of stresses me out, and stressing about this stuff is not good for your health. So it's better just keep it simple if you're overwhelmed with this sort of issues. But some patients love it, and they want to see the N of 1 on a day-to-day basis, and it encourages them to keep going. So that's definitely, we integrate those things when patients need it or want it.
Before you actually got on the episode, we were talking about like how we switch between just like different foods, different, I guess, dieting practices on a day-to-day, sometimes week-to-week basis, right? And then when you were talking about Ketotarian or Mediterranean keto, you mentioned that you're not very tribal in your diet approach. Obviously, everybody's different. So my curiosity is is there a benefit? Because when somebody sees a diet, they do the diet, and a lot of individuals then, they're all about keto, or they're all about carnivore, or they're all about paleo forever. Now, in your opinion, do you think that over time that it's beneficial, or there's a benefit in just switching the way you eat from time to time, still keeping the core concepts of healthy foods, some of the main things that you mentioned in terms of seed oils, et cetera, still keeping certain things out, but switching things up over time? Or do you think that, like, if somebody were to do Mediterranean keto, right, and they really liked it, that they could just stick to it for the rest of their life?
I think if they enjoy it, the enjoyment around food and someone loving it and having a positive attitude towards it really is fundamental for the sustainability of it, but also the effects of it as well. If someone's finding anything arduous or punitive or restrictive for long, it's not good, because it's not going to be sustainable. And even if it is sustainable, it's going to be such a source of dread and negative obsession. They're not going to actually produce good results in the long term. With that said, that's something that I'm exploring in detail in intuitive fasting. It's macro variability, it's diet variation. I think that works for a lot of people, especially if they're stuck at a plateau. Like, if you're feeling great and you love what you do, just keep doing what you're doing. But if you're like, okay, there's something, maybe I'm better off than I was, but I'm not where I want to be, or this isn't working for me, then I think shaking things up is a great way. So that could be eating window variability. So in the book, I do vacillating cycling of eating windows. That's a great hormetic effect on the body, and macro variability too. So I think that's good for the gut microbiome. It's good for the metabolism. It's good for a lot of different things. It's sort of like a yoga class for your metabolism, where you keep it flexible and you keep your body adapting to life itself, which it's a good idea. So yes, to answer your question, yes, I think that variability is a good idea for people to try.
You mentioned also just like sustainable and someone being able to enjoy their diet being most important. So my question is in regards to artificial sweeteners. You try to recommend something to somebody like, hey, switch from regular Coke to Coke Zero, and they're like, oh no, artificial sweeteners, like I can't do that, I heard those are bad. So what's your stance in regards to artificial sweeteners?
Well, look, they're not healthy. I would say that they have their studies to show. There's several studies that show that these things can definitely disrupt the microbiome. They're not good to have for a lot of people's digestive health. And, but do I think it's relatively better from a metabolic standpoint over the regular Coke? Yeah. But just because something's better doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal. So I'm fine with the better option if you have it occasionally, but are there more optimal options? And we live in a time now where even if it's not a health food, but there are like stevia sweetened sodas out there. There are different, more like monk fruit sweetened sodas that are out there as well that are at least. Are those health foods to be having copious amounts? No, but they're at least a little bit more natural and less insulting to the gut microbiome than something like, sucralose or aspartame.
How did you end up being keto and vegetarian at the same time? How'd you come to this?
I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I was more plant-based for a long time, and then it evolved. I noticed I was depending a lot on carbohydrates for fuel. So I just switched up the macronutrients, and I'm more of a pescatarian keto with some grass-fed beef too. It's really flexible. It's not super dogmatic, but it's still mostly plant-based. And how it just evolved. It was evolving of like, okay, this worked me for a time. My energy's not great. I adjusted to a higher fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate, macronutrient ratio, hence Ketotarian. And that's really where it came to be at, is my own personal journey with food. And then clinically at the same time, I hosted a podcast for 3 years or so called Keto Talk. And I just kept hearing a lot of questions of, potential pitfalls of the ketogenic diet. I'm stuck at a plateau. And they were depending a lot on bacon and butter all day, every day, because it was keto, but it wasn't good for them long term. They had a honeymoon period with keto because it's way better than the standard American diet. But back to my earlier statement, just because something's better doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal for long-term health, like months and years down the line. So that's another reason why I wrote Ketotarian, to say, how do we make this a sustainable lifestyle change and integrate these whole foods that will help you in the long run? And just because something increases ketosis doesn't necessarily mean it's great for your health long term. And just because something decreases ketosis doesn't necessarily mean it's bad for you. So the name of the game isn't just anything to get increased ketones at all costs. It's what's the bigger context of your health and understanding that.
Multiple times during the episode, you talked about the gut quite a bit. And, you mentioned things that obviously are not good for your gut, but like I really like Greek yogurt and kimchi, right? You hear that stuff's good for the gut, but is it actually really like that? Like, does it really make a difference? I'm curious, are there foods that maybe people should start implementing into their diet that is good for gut health? Because I used to take like probiotics in the past. I don't really take that anymore, and I haven't noticed a difference, right? So, are there any foods that people should start implementing into their diet that really will be beneficial for their gut health?
I think fermented foods like that are great ideas. Getting a grass-fed yogurt. If you're problems with dairy, well, look, fermentation does mitigate some of the dairy issues because the fermentation helps with the casein breakdown, the dairy protein, and the dairy sugar. But you can get coconut yogurts and other yogurts if you have problems with that, to get cultured bacteria from that. Kimchi, I love kimchi too. You can try kombucha. You can do kvass. There's lots of different fermented foods that are good supporters of a healthy gut microbiome. So they're less like grass seed, where they come and like populate the microbes and make more bacteria. They're more of like influencers of the microbiome economy. They are like good bacteria that will just encourage good diversity of the microbiome, as well as those foods, specifically the kimchi. They have fiber. So fiber is good prebiotic food for producing more good bacteria. And look, good bacteria are also antibiotics in many ways too, because they help to kill off any opportunistic or dysbiotic bacteria. They're regulators of the microbiome. So that is something to think about. But be judicious with it. Some people that have digestive issues, more isn't always better. And they can feel worse with these things. And then they think, oh, this isn't for me. Well, how are you using this? Start off with a low amount, because they're shifting the microbiome. And that can cause some symptoms like more bloating or more digestive symptoms, and especially if you're new to that. But start off with a small amount, test it, see how you feel. A lot of people really enjoy them. It improves their overall digestive health, and they enjoy eating it in general. But yeah, those are some things to think about. Look, there's nuances to all the things I said. Those fermented foods are also higher in histamines. So some people are histamine intolerant, and what I just said doesn't apply to them. But it's about the context of the person. If you have histamine intolerance, you probably don't want to have those fermented foods, but many people can enjoy them.
There's not a lot of good research supporting that probiotics do much of anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's some studies to show that it can be beneficial. I prefer starting with food, and from there, if you want to experiment with probiotics, and typically it's not high enough, you have to get a higher colony forming units to actually see changes. But I find, in my opinion, that the needle moves stronger for people just starting with food, and that's not just probiotic food, but it's prebiotic foods too with fiber.
Great. Where can people find out more information about you? Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. Everything's at drwillcole.com. That's drwillcole.com.
Great. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
That was very informative. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot there.
Yeah, he's spitting out a lot of information.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome though.
Yeah, I think when it comes to, you see, the yogurt and it says, probiotics, and it says how many billion whatever it has on there. I just think it's important for people to know there's not a lot of research that is like well established that says this is definitely good for you, which we already know with nutrition science, it's just really, really hard to tell, and for the reasons that he mentioned. So I think the best way to go about, handling stuff like that is just to try it for yourself. You try it, and you feel that you enjoy the food, you like it, you feel like you're digesting things well, then maybe you stick with it.
Yeah, it's not exciting, but what he said about start with the food first is so important. When you mentioned probiotics, like it reminded me when my diet was, all over the place. Like, oh, probiotics, that's going to help my stomach. And like, I went to, I can't remember where, Sprouts, and I was like, hey, what's like the best probiotic? And of course it was like, I think it was like $60 or something, and I'm not saying like, oh, that's hella money, but like when you look at all the other ones, they're like, like $10.
Crazy, yeah.
And then it's like, bam, here's this one that's like in this fancy box. And I'm like,
$60 a month, probably,
right. Yeah. So I'm like, that's the one I'm going with. And I remember I didn't notice anything, but also like I got real constipated. I don't know if it was just because that or because it was timing with the rest of my shitty diet.
Yeah.
So exactly what Mark's saying, and exactly what Dr. Will Cole just said. Start with the diet and try it for yourself, but like don't put too much weight on one pill you think it's gonna help that gut. It's gonna be a lot more work than just that. And looking at my past, it's 4 years in the making of where I can actually handle some decent food and not feel terrible.
Yeah, no, it's like you throw so many things at a board and you're just trying to see what sticks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When really it's just, trying to be a little bit patient and, eat better foods than In-N-Out and fries every day.
You want to try to have as little intervention as possible. You get everything you need from food. And then if you are somebody that cares that much and you get your blood work checked and it turns out you might need magnesium or you might need to supplement stuff, or you're on a low carbohydrate diet and you cramp up and you want to utilize a product like Element or, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, you know, you just want to try to pay attention to how many of these supplements you're taking and what are they doing for you? You know, do you really feel like you're getting a benefit from them? Are you noticing a difference with your blood work? Is it, you know, do you feel good? You know, this is the basics. You know, are you feeling really good every day is probably where you should start.
Mm-hmm. That's why the big concepts I think are like the most important. Like he had some great concepts of the gut, you know, decreasing grain, seed, gluten, you know, conventional dairy, sugar, industrial seed oils. Those are really good concepts to start with. Some good, really good things to start with, along with getting adequate sleep, adequate amounts of protein, exercise. Like there are a lot of things that you can just kind of check on a checklist and make sure you have all those. And they'll probably deal with a lot of the issues you're trying to deal with, rather than adding some probiotics into the mix and cut X extreme, whatever, like all these random things that probably aren't going to make that much of a difference.
It's easy to get confused because your stomach hurts or you have an issue. Like, man, I end up in the bathroom all the time. This would be great. I heard probiotics are great. And you run to the store and you try to pick up something and you don't really know. You don't even know, like, you know, how stable the probiotic is, like in the product. Like it's so hard to know much of anything. And nowadays, you know, I've heard more recently, there's a lot of knockoff products on Amazon. And so when you buy a supplement from Amazon, there's companies that go so far out of their way. I mean, they get busted here and there, but they make a lot of money first. They will try to mimic or copy what the superior brands look like. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's a lot of like just shitty stuff going on, you know, and then plus the supplement industry is not all that regulated and stuff like that. And so if you can get it from your food, then you're on the right path. And you know, eating, you know, whole foods. People can argue all they want about diets, but if you just are eating, you're eating fruit, vegetables, and meat, you're not gonna be fat. You're going to be in great shape, and you're not going to need a lot of supplementation probably.
Yeah, and taking things slow, you know, like, oh, Nsima said that he has Greek yogurt and, you know, he has a good healthy gut. I'm going to eat, you know, a bucket full. That's some stupid shit that I would do back in the day. And be like, oh my gosh, it doesn't work for me because my stomach is cramping. It's like, oh, like, because I haven't had this much dairy, you know, my entire life. So yeah, one step at a time.
Hey, yo, real talk though. Go to Trader Joe's if you want your Greek yogurt. It's the prices over there are great, and cranberry juice. I think Stan is a big fan of cranberry juice from Trader Joe's. It's cheap there. Like
really?
Yeah. The cranberry juice at Trader Joe's.
How do they have such good prices over there? What's going on?
I don't know. It's like $3 or $4, whereas the same one at Rayleigh's is like $9 or $10.
Lakewood or something.
Lakewood.
Right? Yeah. No added sugar.
It's like double the price at Rayleigh's. It makes no sense. Yeah. I don't get how they do it.
Damn.
I don't know, but go to traderjoes.com/powerproject. Just kidding. That'd be sick. Which yogurt though? Because I just get Faye like at Walmart.
Oh, dude, see, yeah, no, their Greek yogurt is it's like this. They have different flavors. They have an unflavored one, but it's a full fat Greek yogurt, and it has some like honey in it or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or it had but they have an unflavored one if you want that.
Do they have a fat free one?
Why do you want a fat-free yogurt? What? What? Ew.
That's what I use.
Ew. Yeah. They probably do, but ew. Fat-free.
Fat-free is a little rough.
Yeah. The problem with Trader Joe's is that they have plantain chips.
Mm-hmm. So plantain.
I don't know how to.
And you love them.
They're so good. The spicy ones.
I gotta try those.
If I go get yogurt from there, I'm gonna get like 5 bags of those.
They got good snacks, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say places like that have a lot of good snacks.
So good. Because they sell you on the healthy version of that food, but you know it's just
this like ambiance of the place. You think everything's fair game, you know?
Yeah,
everyone's like a hippie in there. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, like everyone here is totally healthy. You don't see a lot of. It's not Walmart.
That is so true.
Man.
It's not Walmart.
But they can see that I'm a foreigner when I walk in there, though. Like, I don't know where anything is, and like I'm always in someone's way, and they get pissed off at me.
You're like a tourist.
Yeah, that's the one in Elk Grove, though, so maybe it's different elsewhere.
You know what the weird thing about Trader Joe's is, too? The prices are actually great.
But why is it big? How they have all the stuff?
They are tiny.
But why is it that, for some reason, like for years, I always used to think Trader Joe's is expensive, even though they're not. Mm-hmm. They're really not. It's not like I
have to go check it out. I haven't.
It's great prices for
Really?
great things. Yeah.
Huh.
I think some grocery stores just sell different stuff. Like a place like Nugget sells different stuff. So it might price people out of it because of like the type of products they have there. But if you look at like some of their cereal or some, like usually it's similar price, you know, but then they'll have like weird eggs, you know, they'll have like weird omega-3 freaking, you know, from the chicken down the street, you know, they'll have weird stuff. And then, so you look at the prices in there and you go, oh my God, how come the prices are so jacked up? But it's like almost like, it's not boutique grocery store, but sort of, you know, it's different.
Let me rewind real quick. I gotta make a comment about something you said about the Amazon thing. Dude, I really was like wondering, because I was looking up some supplements months ago on Amazon. I'm like, wow, why is this so cheap now? Why is this so cheap? I didn't buy it because it was suspiciously cheap. Suspiciously. But that makes a lot of sense, because
I hate running into a word. I can't say that well.
Suspiciously.
Still can't say self-conscious.
Self-conscious.
Fuck it.
Subconscious? Self-conscious?
Still can't say that word.
Self-conscious.
Or words.
Conscious.
Arugula.
Nope.
Nope.
No, that one's fine.
Hey,
arugula.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Hey, but be careful about those subs on Amazon, because it might be a $6 vitamin D, but that's not some vitamin D.
You might not be getting the D that you're looking for.
Nope.
Yeah. No, it's actually that you mentioned vitamin D. I was looking up K2, and so like vitamin D on its own, don't know the price in my head, but like we'll say it was $10. Vitamin K2 on its own was $10. When you get the combination, it was like $5. It was like very different. I'm like, who knows what the hell, like the amounts, you know what I mean?
Yeah, how they use more ingredients and get less.
Yeah, I'm like the capsule size change, like whatever, you know what I mean? But I was like, no, like I'm gonna pass on that one.
Might as well just like go with reputable brands.
Yeah, you try to go with brands that you like. I always use a company called Jarrow, Jarrow. And they've been around forever.
Yeah.
Prices are like in the middle. You know, it's not like super cheap or anything, but they've been around for a long time. Like, why not use, you know, someone that's been around and executed well for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that shit on Amazon's kind of trippy.
That sucks.
Yeah. Ripping everything off.
They've been doing that for a long time with like electronics and stuff, right? So I guess it's no big surprise. Yeah.
Those bastards. Take us on out of here, Andrew.
I will. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Just got word as we're podcasting that Element is still offering the free recharge pack. So we're just as confused as you guys were. We didn't know that they were going to keep it going. So we don't know the end of this. So if you guys haven't done so, do so right away, because it could be over by tomorrow. So just head over to drinklmnt.com/power project. Claim your free recharge pack. You just pay $5 shipping and you get 8 samples. Really just amazing stuff. I'm sipping on some right now. Please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bow's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. Don't forget the newsletter. Links down in the description and the podcast show notes. My Instagram and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where are you at?
Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Inyang on Twitter. Mark.
At Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.